Morning! And it really is morning. It's about 6 o'clock in the morning. Ben's dragged me out of bed. My name's Andy Young and I'm one of the automotive lecturers down at Unitech in Auckland, New Zealand, and welcome to my Andy Mechanic YouTube channel. Now, the reason why I've been dragged out of bed so early in the morning, and I don't do 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock's still yesterday as far as I'm concerned, is Ben's Ford Courier Ute has developed a bit of a problem with its engine running. It's very hard to start, coughs and splutters, dies, not very happy. Now, a quick bit of background on this vehicle. We've had the Ute now probably about 4 years. When we first got it, we did lots of work on it. We found it on somebody's driveway, been parked 9 years, hadn't been used, did a full brake overhaul, new clutch, master and slave cylinders, full ignition system overhaul as regards, it's a point system, the old Kettering system, so it's got ignition points, HT leads, obviously spark plugs, that kind of stuff. So, dizzy cap, new rotor arm, replaced everything, new belts, and obviously a new set of tyres. Now this vehicle, and a cam belt, had that done last year. This vehicle has actually been incredibly reliable. It's never caused any problems at all, and it's probably covered about 30,000, 20,000 Ks whilst we've had it. We don't use it that much. It's pretty heavy on fuel, but it's a very useful vehicle, so we're not going to get rid of it, and it wasn't very expensive either. And it's in pretty good nick. Underneath, Ben cleaned all the chassis back and shuts it all, and it looks pretty good, and it flies through every warrant every year. So the first thing to do is to decide, is it an engine running problem that's caused by an ignition fault, i.e. spark, or is it an engine running fault caused by a fueling fault? Now, don't forget, the fuel is the petrol that it uses, and of course the air that goes in as well. We need the air just as importantly as we need the petrol. So I'm going to start with the ignition because I have a little hunch, and we're going to check to see if the points are opening and closing properly. Now, sure, I can take the distributor cap off and I can look and I can see it and I can sort of visually inspect the points, the contact surfaces of the points, and see if they're all burnt and stuff. But I want to be able to do this in a way where maybe there's not very good access to the distributor. If I show you a way of doing this where we can use a logic probe, or you could use a test light to do the same thing. Essentially, just a very quick bit of background so you understand or have an idea how an ignition coil works. There's two windings inside. One's a primary winding, one's a secondary winding. The primary winding is made of thicker wire and it has fewer turns, and that's the one that essentially gets, I was going to say 12 volts. Okay, under cranking it gets 12 volts. The secondary winding is made of much thinner wire, and there's many more turns. And basically what happens to generate a spark is current is allowed to flow through the primary winding. That builds up a magnetic field around it. And when we want a spark, we disconnect that circuit. That's the points opening. And when that circuit disconnects and the current stops flowing, that magnetic field collapses and it induces a current into the secondary winding. Now, because the secondary winding's got a lot more turns, the actual voltage that's induced is much higher. This vehicle probably runs around about 40,000 volts for an ignition spark. I don't really know, and I don't have any equipment to test that kind of high voltage. On more modern cars, it's much higher, and that's because of fuel injection, and they tend to run a lot leaner, and you need a much stronger spark to start a lean engine. Plus, there are limitations as to how high we can make the voltage using an old school set of points. That's another reason why it's limited to sort of 40,000 volts. And that causes some pretty big problems, and I'm not going to get into that, but more modern cars, much better ignition systems, believe me. Although this one you can fix out in the sticks, which is pretty cool. So, you're going to need, if you've already made one, a trusty logic probe. Now, if you haven't got one of these, don't panic. Just get yourself a test light, and you can use that, or you can even use a voltmeter. Yeah, you must have a multimeter somewhere. Grab your multimeter, and you can check to see if you've got a voltage, which would, the test light, we're going to get a bulb light up when the circuit is open, because the points are actually on the grounding side of the circuit. So when the points are closed, we should see an earth points. Okay, we'll head out to the vehicle. It's a bit cold outside, but we'll head out to the vehicle, pop the bonnet, and I'll see if we can find Ben. He should be around somewhere. And we'll crank the engine with the test light in place, just on the right wire, and we'll see what we get. If I'm expecting to see no switching, you know, because the vehicle's not starting when it's cold. If we're getting switching, then it's going to be a fuel fault. If there's no switching, we know straight away we've got an ignition fault, and then we can pull the dizzy cap off and start to inspect those points. Here we go. Okay, well, on Ben's ute, the ignition coil, this is the king lead here, look, the ignition coil's basically housed down by the side of the radiator. And if we just pull that cover off, there we go, take the whole thing off. So we've got here, look, this is coil in, positive primary winding, and this will be the negative on this side here. And coming out the middle is the one end of the secondary winding, which then runs across to the distributor cap, gets distributed down to the spark plugs via the HT leads. So this wire here should have positive 12 volts coming in. So a quick probe check. Just turn the thingy off. There you go, look. So we get positive, we get red. If we go on to the negative, we get only green. Don't touch anything, we get both a bit dull. So with the ignition turned on the coil on positive, we should get only red, and we're not. Okay, that's odd. Alright, and this being the output, if that's green, which it is, that means that it's grounded. Okay, so if I get Ben to crank the engine now, if those lights flick from ground to positive to ground, then we know we've got switching at the points and they're working fine. Okay, Ben?
Ready?
Yep. Oh dear. That's not good. And again. Right, it appears we have no switching of the points. So, inside the dizzy, let's take the cap off and see what's going on. Okay, so we just remove the distributor cap, and this is the rotor arm. Now we can get rid of that. Don't throw it away, we'll need it later on. Just inside here, you can see the ignition points. Now if I can try and wiggle that around a bit for you, there you go, look. And if I open those, where's my logic probe? If I just open those, definitely something's happening. If you look in there, those are the points. That's the condition of the contact surfaces. And looking at my camera, it doesn't look. Need to focus. Ben, just come around here for us and just hold those points open for us.
You can actually see what I'm holding open.
Yeah, just hold that there like that.
Yeah.
There you go. Ooh, look at that! They are really badly burned. Ben, you need some new points. Holy shit. Okay. I also think we've got another ignition fault though. Because when those points open up, so which proves that they're making contact, when they open up, we can hear the fuel pump fire up. And that fuel pump should be on all the time. So there's something not right. Ben's just going to crank the engine over, and we're going to make sure that those points actually do open and close via the heel of the cam. Now the heel of the cam is the bit just down here that runs on that shaft there. Look, and you can see the shaft's got 4 lobes on it, 4 little lobes, one for each cylinder, and that those points should be pushed open as the heel runs on the lobe. And as you can see, it's pretty much on a lobe now, and the points look pretty close to me. But anyway, if you want to give it a crank bend for me, and we'll just do that again. Crank again. Okay, So we've got no opening and closing of the points, which basically tallies with what we had earlier on at the ignition coil. You know, we had no switching going on. So if the points aren't opening and closing, then of course there won't be any switching of the current. So I need to take those points out, give them a clean up, reinstall them, set the gap, and hopefully she's going to start. Okay, so there's usually points normally held to the base plate via 2 screws, and we've got a wire off this screw, so we need to remember that that's there later on. A bit awkward with you. Oh, it's tight. Try that one. Really, we need a dumpy screwdriver for this. Now there's one. No. No whips. Right, we'll just get rid of that out of the way. Then can look after the seal.
It's like a very good seal.
It's about knackered, isn't it, that one? Right, let's see if we can get in with these. So we'll need that screw later on. Come on, my whips, don't let me down. There we go. Genius. Okay, that's one. Oh, there's a washer on this one. Come on, screwdriver. There we go. Okay. I'm going to leave that one in place, actually, it's quite loggy, that one. Right, so we'll extract the points. And the last thing to do is to just loosen off this screw here so we can get rid of that wire. Now, really, we should be fitting a new set of points, but I will do another video on doing that and setting the points gap. But the important thing is we need to get this vehicle up and running because Ben's got to go mountain biking this morning. Wow, those points are terrible. Okay, into the workshop, let's give them a clean up. Okay, well, we're against the clock a little bit this morning, but I thought I'd make a good video. Okay, so if you look in there, look, you can see the corrosion, sorry, the burning really on those points. I'll do another close-up, so I'll flick the camera around and do a really good close-up on there. And then, get some memory cloth, give those a bit of a clean up. You can clean them in situ, but it's a lot easier for the video to take them out to show you how to clean them. Here we go. So if you look down there, look, I'll just zoom in a bit for you. You can see all the pitting and burning on the contacts. Amazing camera, isn't it? I'm actually using the screen because I can see better. That's why I'm a bit all over the place. Wow. That's it's done well to keep going, Benjamin. That's all I can say. Really, really bad. Right, emery cloth time. Okay, so grab yourself emery cloth. This is 80 grit. Pretty much anything will do. Okay, open up the points and put your cloth in there. Close the points, and then away you go. Make sure you've got yourself a nice cup of coffee. Because this can take quite a while, especially when they're really bad. I mean, in reality, you'd only clean the points up if, you know, you don't have any more. They're so cheap that you just go and buy a new set. Right, let's see how we're doing. Oh, a lot more yet. This is only a temporary fix anyway, because Ben's going to get some more today. How you been? Or ready for Friday, and I can fit them on Friday for you. Okay, that's going to have to do for today, I think. But let's have a quick look. Not bad. Still a little bit of pitting right in the centre, but I think that's going to get Ben to Woodhill, wherever he's going this morning. So yeah. Right, let's get them put back on the... oh, one more thing. Now, you may ask, well, Andy, how on earth could the points close up? Why was there no gap? Why weren't they opening? Well, the reason for that, pretty simply, is this heel here that runs on that cam inside the distributor, well, it wears down. And as it wears down, of course, the gap on the points closes up. It becomes less. And it gets to a point where, of course, this is worn so much that the points just don't open at all. And therefore we don't get any switching of the primary circuit, and we don't get a spark. And that's exactly what's going on at the moment. Now there should be a little bit of grease on that cam, because it's not oiled. A little bit of grease on there, on that heel that runs on the cam. And normally, on most points that I've seen, there's also a little felt mounted on the side here, and you put a little bit of oil in the felt, and the felt will continuously lubricate or ensure that cam that runs in the middle is lubricated. But hey, this hasn't got one, and that's probably why it's failed. Right, back to the truck. Let's get these points put back in again. So the first job, stick the wire back on. Now they're sitting there like that, and that wire will have gone just in there, look, in that gap against the square nut. That's the plan, Stan. Okay, now there's usually a little pin, there we are, look, so you'll make sure that that pin is seated in that little hole just down here. So we'll just do that first. Logic probe. It's alright, I've done the logic probe thing. Just get that washer all the way out. There we go. Right, points. So the points just sit one under that washer there, look, under that bolt. Get rid of that wire. And then just make sure that that pin is located properly. That's really important. So we can get this one done up now. Tweak that up. And then we'll do a very rudimentary points gap set. Just like we're in the forest with a Jeep. Right, second screw. Right, I'm going to replace that one. So Ben's found a one that's not quite so chewed up. Ready my parts storage. Okay, so you can see just down here the heel of the points running on that cam, but we're not on a lobe at the moment, so let's just turn the engine over by hand. The ignition's off, isn't it, man?
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm just going to turn focus, turn the engine over by hand. There you go. And a bit more. That heel is pretty much, there we go, on that lobe now, and you can see the points have opened up. That's great, but is that points gap too much or too little? Well, it looks like quite a lot to me. Obviously I'll show you how to set the points properly with the specs when it's not 6 o'clock in the morning. But as long as those points open on a lobe and close when they're not on a lobe, this car will run. And that's the important thing. We've got to get this vehicle up and running. So we could do a crank test now before we go any further to see if we're getting switching. Logic probe. Okay, so we're on the coil negative. That's the one that runs to the points. Ben, if you want to crank for me. There we go. We have switching. Brilliant! This engine's going to run. Okay, so when that heel is on cam like it is there, the gap that you got between those two contacts, that's known as the points gap. So if you look at your specs, whatever that is on your specs, make that gap. And to adjust it, all you need to do is slacken off these two bolts here, look, the two screws, and you can move the points forwards and backwards to open and close and adjust that points gap. Once you've got it set right, close those two screws up and you're all done. And I'll show you how to do that properly on the next video. Right, let's get this thing fired up, Ben, so you can get down to Woodhill. Okay, did you get me some grease? Fantastic. Okay, we'll stick a little bit of grease on that. Oh, wash grease.
Yep.
Okay. Just going to put a little bit of grease on that cam, and it'll, obviously as the engine turns, it'll work. Right. And we've got a seal. Now this seal looks like it's sided. It's got a little notch on one side, and that notch, there we are, look. Okay, so we'll stick that in there. It's a bit hard. I'm sure we bought a new one of those, Ben, actually.
Oh, a seal?
Yeah, I think we got a new seal for it. Right, rotor arm, back down there. Dizzy cap goes back on. Cool. Right, so lastly we can just put the king lead back on the coil. It has this stupid integrated cover, but anyway. Okay, right, let's rid the vehicle of tools. Okay, Ben, is it going to start?
Yeah.
Let's try. Turn the key. That tells us the ignition time is a bit out. Do you know why?
Why?
Because we changed the dwell period because we didn't set the points gap. We just made a gap. Okay, so we've set the points gap by eye. It's obviously a little bit too much. That's fine because we're at the side of the road and we've got very little tools. In fact, all we've got so far is a Leatherman. That's all we'll have used, isn't it? Leatherman and a bit of sandpaper. So
You should have a file.
we could either go back in the dizzy. Yeah, we could go back in the dizzy and we could change that points gap, or because it's affected the ignition a little bit, the ignition timing, we could just slacken off the dizzy and just move it a little bit until it starts nicely, or we could get a strobe. But what I'll do, this is like a grassroots kind of fix at the side of the road, and the next video, when I come to fit the new points, I will actually do everything by the book and do all the specs and use a strobe and set the ignition time properly. But most people won't have that at the side of the road. They won't have all that gear. All they'll have is some really basic tools.
And YouTube.
Well, only if they've got a signal. But hey, might have YouTube too. See how to do it. Might better watch the video. Hey. So all we'll do is we'll slacken off the pinch bolt on the dizzy, move the distributor slightly to change the advance, the tight ignition timing, and then Ben should be on his way. Okay, so going back to the distributor then, we've got a bolt here, look. And this is an adjusting, see it's got a slot on it, which means we can move the distributor in rotation, forwards and backwards, and that's going to change the advance and the retard of the ignition. So the first thing you have to do is just put a little line on there, and that gives us what we know as a datum, somewhere we can always go back to and know that that was the original position. So the engine's running. What I'm going to do is let it warm up to operating temperature, and then I'm going to manually, by ear, adjust that distributor so the engine's running as smooth as possible. And that'll do for today. Okay, so we've got the engine running for about 5 minutes now, and it is warming up, but we're running out of time, so we're just going to have to set this really before it's fully warm. Now you can see the initial mark on there, and it's running like a piece of shit, to be honest. It's really, really lumpy, so we'll just back that off. And you can just rotate the dizzy. Now we've got no idea where we are with this, but we can just rotate the dizzy. And you'll get to a point where, there we go, you want optimum RPM. So that's too low. Bring it round. lumpy, go back. Okay, we'll try it there. Nip that off. Oh. Okay, Ben, just give it a few revs for me. Cool. Is that all right?
Yeah, runs.
God, it's so great. So it revs cleanly, it revs like it used to do. It sounds all right, actually, doesn't it? Yeah, good job. So you're going to buy some new points?
Thursday.
Thursday, okay. Or maybe I'll film it on Sunday then. Maybe it'll be Christmas one. All right, so do that, and then I'll do the proper video. Cool, good job. Okay, she lives again. So quick diagnostics using the logic probe, or a test light, or a voltmeter. You can use whatever you want to see if the primary circuit is switching. It wasn't, so we fixed it. Well, there you go. Using some really basic stuff at the side of the road, and that's really what this video was all about, getting that vehicle running so you can get mobile again. It's not about setting specific tolerances and being super exact, and actually quite different to most of my videos. We got the vehicle sorted out, and it turned out that basically the problem was the fact that the points were so badly burnt, we weren't really making contact. They were making some contact, but they weren't opening. They weren't switching. They weren't opening and closing. And without that, then benzene burnout. Without that, then of course we're not going to induce any current into the secondary winding, and we're not going to get a spark. And the engine will not start without a spark, obviously. Okay, well, I hope you found that video helpful. I will do a follow-up. I'll do a proper Andy Mechanic video showing you how to install a brand new set of ignition points to a Ford Courier Ute. It's pretty old, 1990 something or other, and how to set the gap, and then once that's done, how to set your ignition timing using a strobe. Okay, well, that's about it for today. And oh, by the way, if you'd like to subscribe, click on the subscribe button. I think it's this side, I can never remember. Click on that, you'll see a little gear icon. Click the gear icon, and then you'll see a little box. If you want notifications, click the box, and then YouTube will send you an email whenever I upload any new videos. You'll also find me on Facebook, Instagram, Google+, and Twitter. You feel free to communicate through those portals, but I would ask if you could use YouTube as your first point of call. The reason for that is most people are watching the video, they'll see the comments, and your question might be the same as their question, and that way they get their answer straight away, and I don't have to reply back to them. Not that I don't enjoy replying back, but I don't have a lot of time, and it can give them the answer straight away, and they can get the car fixed and get back on the road, which is what it's all about. Okay, that's it. I'm going to go. I've got a trailer to paint. Cheers, over and out.